Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, a neighbor stole my house and sold it while I was in a coma. He forged documents pretending that he was legally allowed to do all of this. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the story. So I live in South America and I don't want this story to make it seem like we don't have healthcare down here or anything. I just know that it could seem like that to people in other countries that are under some false assumption that we don't have the same advancements as they do. I was a diabetic, only I did not really know it at the time. Or more accurately, I knew it, but I had no official medical record of it. At a doctor appointment, I was told that I was pre-diabetic and needed more testing. Work got busy and I just put it off for so long it felt less real. I knew that when I was not feeling good, it could have been because of that. I ate the wrong kinds of food, never bought a meter to check my sugars, etc. One day, I got really sick and ended up in the hospital. I took such poor care of myself that despite the doctors trying to get me under control, I ended up in a coma. Again though, this was preventable and totally my fault. I take care of myself now, but while I was in the coma, my neighbor decided to take advantage of it. So I lived in a nice house alone and it was empty, and the guy was known for being a greedy jerk. He was the type of guy that would see you drop money and grab it for himself even if he did not need it. Anything he could get, he wanted, and it did not matter who he hurt along the way. Nice house plus the owner in a coma to him meant that it was found money. He sold my home and dumped all of my stuff when it got sold. Nobody was looking out for the house, so 2 months later when I woke up, I assumed I still had my house. After I finally got to leave the hospital and go home, I thought something was wrong with my brain. Car not mine in the driveway, kids' toys on the lawn, plus my key not working led me to just knock on the door. Man, hello? Me, hi, this is address, right? Man, yes, can I help you? Me, this is my house. I was in the hospital for a few months and before I went in, this was my house. It should be empty. Man, we bought this house and moved in a month ago. Are you sure that you did not lose the house or something? We paid a lot of money. Me, I'm sure you did and I don't think you did anything wrong. Is there a chance that you can tell me who sold you the house? They might at least know what happened to all my things. The man started telling me that he bought the house from my neighbor, and I knew right then it was not my brain that was the issue here. My neighbor stole my house because I was sick and sold it to this family who had no idea that it was stolen. I told them that I was taking him to court and I was sorry, but they might want to look into buying another house, since I planned to get this one back along with my things. They were not happy being told they might have to move again so soon, but I needed my house. I literally had nowhere to sleep that night and called 3 friends before one agreed to let me stay for a few weeks to sort all of this out. Not before I spoke to my neighbor though, who told me that it was my fault I left my house unattended, that it could not sit and wait forever because it could sell great. He was not even sorry about it and even made a comment about thinking that I was just gonna die and he would not need to explain anything to me. So then I got a lawyer and he searched into how he was able to sell a house that he did not own. Well, what my lawyer found was that the paperwork all looked fine when it came to what he needed. He got everything clearly forged though, even IDs with my name on it but his face. A forged deed to the home as well, and a ton of other things to try and make it seem real. I was furious and wanted to make sure that he went to jail, and I got my house back. So I had just gotten a new chance at life, which came with a lot of changes I had to make. Doing those while not having a permanent place to live was not an easy thing to do. Plus all the stress made me want the stuff I couldn't have unless I wanted to end up back in the hospital or in another coma. So I tried to let my lawyer handle as much as he could without me to lower my stress. The last thing I needed after being in a coma was a heart attack. Things were a little weird because the case of if he was going to jail happened before me suing him for the money. I had to show who I was in order to establish that his paperwork was forged in order to steal my property for a profit. It was forgery, fraud, and with the amount of money made it a big deal as well. And yes, he was found guilty for everything, and in his mind he could not believe that he did not get away with it. He tried to argue the house would have been his anyway, not true, but it did not matter. All the case was meant for is to see if he was guilty or not, And well, he was, so he was off to prison for a decent amount of time. I got to see him for another case regarding how much money he was gonna owe me. Aside from me, I just wanted to point out that he also had to return the money the family paid for the house that he illegally sold. After that, he owed me money for stealing my property and getting rid of all my things, displacing me for all this time and making profit from my land. At the end, he had to pay me the equivalent of $475,000. Money that he clearly didn't fully have on his own because he had to give back all what he made on the house. And when you don't have cash to pay a person back, then the courts will take your assets and sell those to give back the person the money. He had some money as well as his house. In a huge irony, his house had to be sold, and this time I was the one that got all the profits from it. With the added bonus of not being his neighbor once he got out of jail. As for the family, they were upset but understood when they had to move out. I'm really glad they didn't do something like refuse to leave and make even more problems for me. Since I moved back in, I've just been really focused on trying to keep myself healthy and not end up back at the hospital. So far so good, and on that side of things, I don't know if I will get told when neighbor gets out of jail, but if he ever tries to call me or do something else crazy, I will be sure to tell you all. And yeah, ripe stars, let's hope that this neighbor does not see the light of day for a long time. Taking advantage of people in a coma is just the lowest of the low. Either way, if you also despise these kinds of people, then please don't forget to like the video and maybe even leave a comment, because that would help me tremendously. The next one is titled Revenge on Company. A little background, I work in a call center of a bank. Every customer who calls us must answer a few verification questions, and if they hang up or answer wrong, we need to block their access to call center, assuming it was an attempt to use someone else's account. Then, if they call again, every employee will see that the access to call center is denied, and to do anything with their account, the caller has to personally go to the branch to unblock the access. And well, one time I was talking to a very rude customer who demanded everything done immediately. I told him I would happily do everything he asks for, but first he needs to answer the questions. He started yelling even louder, called me names, as well as saying that I'm unprofessional, and then hung up. So I blocked all of his access. Now he will be forced to go to the branch to unblock it, and only then he will be able to do what he wanted. And oops, he mentioned that he was abroad, could not go to the branch, and that's why he called us. He thought I was unprofessional, so I made sure I did everything according to our procedures, so he should be satisfied. My dear customer, enjoy not being able to use your money for a long time. And the next one is another petty revenge story. And please let me know in the comments, by the way, whether you enjoy petty revenge or not. I think they are like nice little snippets of revenge, and it's always fun to read them. I am 35 male and my dad 67 male, separated from my mom 68 female a couple years ago. He is a drunk and cheated for years. My mom found out that he had been traveling for work and actually had been meeting a girl, 40 female, from his old neighborhood. This girl knew that my dad was married, and once he moved out, he made his relationship with this woman official. They moved in together, and he even financed her new shoe business. My mom and my dad still have a business together. They're still married for insurance reasons, and they see each other every day. My sister still talks and has dinner with him once a month. He still drinks every weekend, and he asks my mom about how me and my sister are doing. Also, he still finds his way to get invited to the family Christmas parties, and pretty much nothing has changed for him, even though he cheated and left us. So I decided to cut him off my life because it enrages me so much that there are no consequences for what he did. I have no contact with him whatsoever. Every now and then he texts me for my birthday or when there is an important event in my life and asking me out for dinner, but I just don't answer. My dad is pretty much dead to me, so the other day I was at the mall and ran into him and his girlfriend. He said hi to me, gave me a hug, and when he was about to introduce me to his girlfriend, I pulled my best Addison Montgomery from Grey's Anatomy and went, "You must be the cheating Karen who's been screwing my dad." She was shocked, started crying, ran away, and my dad went after her. I received a lot of stares at the mall and then left. 2 days later, I've received many texts from my dad, my sister, and even my mom saying I should apologize to the woman, which I've ignored. And the next one is an Am I the A-hole story with an update, so please watch until the end to get the final conclusion. Our son and daughter-in-law, 26-year-old, have been together for 2 years and live together. We have always thought she's a very nice girl and she seems to make my son happy, so no problem from us. Our son has his own law firm that he is currently trying to get started. We are very proud of him and we are fortunate enough to help him with a startup loan. Daughter-in-law works at a retail job that she is very happy with, but some time ago husband and I were over at their apartment and we decided to order some food. Husband and I wanted to pay, and since daughter-in-law were ordering from her phone, we gave her our card so she could draw the money from our account. We thought it goes without saying that this was to draw an amount once for the lunch. However, daughter-in-law apparently put our card into her Apple Pay and have been using it since. We did not notice for some months, but recently we saw withdrawals that we didn't recognize. We had our accountant look into it and he discovered that 1. Daughter-in-law has been using our card on her phone, and that number 2, she has spent around $17,000 so far. We were quite shocked and called her up and asked why the hell she's been using our card. She got very defensive, tried to deny it, and eventually said she was entitled to it and why do we care since we have not noticed her use over 4 months. We told her she needed to pay us back immediately or we would report her actions for theft. She apparently does not have the money to pay us back. We have gone to our son and he has offered to pay us back even though he actually cannot afford to. This is not about the money for us, but more about the fact that she has stolen a huge amount of money. While we are comfortable and it took us time to notice, we still recognize the seriousness of stealing $17,000. Our son has completely dismissed her behavior and excused it as her being stressed. And yeah, sure, Ripe Stars, when I get stressed, I also steal $17,000. What a stupid excuse. Anyway, she has taken no responsibility and we are honestly wanting to go forward with the police report to teach her consequences to her actions. Would we be the a-hole for doing this? Edit, they are not married, referring to her as daughter-in-law is just easier for the sake of storytelling. And yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know in the comments what you think about this. Is OP the a-hole here or not? And by the way, personally I would say OP is definitely not the a-hole. I would instantly report that person to the police, even if she is part of the family or whatever. You don't just steal $17,000 without consequences. Especially after being confronted. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. Nevertheless, someone on Reddit said, I work in law enforcement and if you report this to the police, they will take a report and forward charges to the DA. Usually then, the credit card cancels the debit portion as fraudulent. If you just chose to sue her civilly, you will still be liable for the debt, and even if you get a judgment, she may not pay it. I would not give her any special pass to avoid criminal charges. Comment number 2, not the a-hole. Here's your unhappy situation. You can either get the police involved, go nuclear, hope for a felony conviction, hope your son wakes up with the humiliation, and you save him. Or you wait the 10 years or so before your son comes to his senses and they get divorced, after 2 children and a mortgage, financially ruining your son for the next 20 years. Those are your 2 choices, either go nuclear and fight like hell for him to wake the F up, or let it go and be prepared for his ultimate ruination in 10 years. Personally, I would try everything in my power to save my son, even if it meant I could fail and he wouldn't talk to me for 10 years. It's what parents do for their children. We try to save them and sometimes it means we need to run into a burning building. I'm so sorry. Comment number 3, not the a-hole, the entitlement. I do have to ask, was your son aware that this was happening before you approached him? Also, what was she spending it on? 17k is a hefty and brazen amount to spend in 4 months for someone who is used to retail salary. And thankfully guys, we have a final update and it reads like this. So we were utter and completely shocked with our son's nonchalant way of handling this and at a loss. We desperately wanted to fight for our son, but since initial confrontation he had been avoiding us. We decided we would take the advice and call the police to press charges, however, we wanted to let our son know before doing so. Husband and I decided to show up at his office since he had been ignoring our calls and texts. I know this might sound boundary crossing to some, but we desperately wanted to talk to our son. Initially, he got angry and asked us to leave, but he calmed down and agreed to hear us out. We told him our side of the story, and to say the least, he was shocked. He apologized profusely, cried a little, and begged for forgiveness. He told us that he was blinded by love, working 14 hours a day and under the impression that we had gifted his girlfriend the money. His girlfriend had apparently told him that we wanted to spoil her as our future daughter-in-law and that we gave her carte blanche to buy herself nice things as a way to welcome her to the family. And that we had since changed our minds on spoiling her and now wanted all the money back, knowing that she cannot afford it. She had told him that we did that as a manipulative way to force her out of his life to try and control him. He was also under the impression that she would spend maybe $3,000 to $5,000 and not $17K. He was livid and was actually the one who in the end convinced us to pursue legal action. He actually helped us call the police right then and there at his office after our talk. We then went with him home and helped him pack up all her stuff before she came home. She was not on the lease, living rent-free, so kicking her out was no issue. We offered to stay with him for the blow-up, but he wanted to handle it on his own. From what he has told me, she did not take this lightly, so our son's ex has now been pressed with charges and we are awaiting further information. Like some of you pointed out, it's a sufficient amount and she's been pressed with criminal charges. Our bank has also been informed and we are told we will likely get our money back. She blew up on the entire family, but no one but our other daughter-in-law is taking her side. Other daughter-in-law is a whole story for another time perhaps, but we are now glad to officially announce that we are thief-free in the family. We appreciate all your feedback, advice and engagement. And wow, Ripe Stars, I'm so happy for the turn this story took, and I guess you could say that the son of OP finally grew a spine. I think he really dodged a bullet there. And the next one is titled, Neighbor Won't Stay Off My Property, Gets Fenced Out. A little background, my current place is a fairly new build, backs to some woods and was empty for a bit before we moved in. My neighbor has a corner lot, also backs to woods, but is a bit odd shaped since the woods are considered protected green space. Because of this situation, they had used maybe a third of my backyard when they did outdoor activities, volleyball, badminton, etc. None of this bothered me because their kids are really nice and respectful. Fast forward a couple of years and I am having the backyard renovated. Well, the neighbor apparently had an issue with this because he kept bothering the crew during construction, telling them what they could and couldn't do, saying they were too loud or doing things wrong, and claiming that I had asked him to oversee the crew. Spoiler, I did not. Eventually the head contractor has had enough and complains to me about the micromanagement. I go talk to the neighbor and he's acting like he's doing me a huge favor by keeping them in line, but agrees to back off. And he does for about 2 days. I get an alert on my ring on a day the crew is off and there was my neighbor on my patio picking up, inspecting and throwing down some pavers that had already been laid. I tell him to kindly get the F off my property and he proceeds to flip me off and walk back to his place. So now it is time for the petty revenge. When we first moved in, I had a whole house natural gas generator put in because power outages are common when thunderstorms roll through. Thing about those is, they are loud when they turn on, and since we were doing the renovation, I planned on putting a living fence in across from the generator to mute some of the sound that would travel to his place. Well, I talked to the head contractor and we happily agreed to shift the trees from the generator down to the woods and essentially cut off his property from my property. Neighbor was not happy about that move and called the city surveyor to dispute the property line. But my contractor had made sure that we were fully on my property with about 8 inches to spare to account for tree growth. So the end result, neighbor is pissed but powerless. I have some nice trees to look at in the backyard and there's nothing to stop the symphony of my generator when it kicks on every week to do a status check. Edit, this got bigger than expected. Quick edit based on the comments. The neighbor, despite the a-hole behavior, is not a threat to my property. The renovation was finished last year and he has not retaliated at all. I do have video coverage on the generator side of the house and can see when folks enter the area, so we are covered there. Thanks for reading. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.